Paddy Pimblett didn't hold back. As Ilia Topuria vanished behind the curtain of a messy divorce, Paddy stepped forward claiming the whole thing smells staged. A PR shield, a distraction, a fraud hiding behind personal drama. And suddenly, a feud that started years ago is back. Meaner, louder, and far more personal. Tonight, we unravel why Paddy thinks Ilia's crisis isn't a crisis at all. The bad blood between Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria didn't begin with belts, rankings, or trash talk. It began with a bottle thrown backstage. A chaotic moment, years ago, that was supposed to fade as the fighters climbed separate ladders. But rivalries don't fade when ego, pride, and personality collide. They mutate, they wait, and Paddy has been waiting. He always said Ilia built part of his notoriety off that altercation, using the viral clip as fuel, using Paddy's rising stardom as a springboard, using drama as leverage. And when Topuria became champion, Paddy insisted the title didn't erase who Ilia was. An opportunist, a provocateur, a man who knew how to stay relevant by attaching himself to bigger names. So when news of Ilia's divorce surfaced and the MMA world rushed to express sympathy, Paddy didn't join the chorus. He froze, listened, watched, and then said exactly what most fighters would never dare utter publicly: convenient timing. The words hit harder than punches because they came from someone who has lived inside the same business machine. Paddy knows when stories feel organic and when they feel manufactured. In his eyes, Ilia's sudden disappearance wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't tragedy. It was branding, strategy, a well-timed emotional shield to avoid fights, avoid pressure, and avoid the real challenges ahead. Paddy claimed Ilia wasn't stepping away because he was broken. He was stepping away because a shaky champion needed cover. And the more he spoke, the more old fans, old enemies, and old wounds began to reopen. The feud wasn't dead. It just needed a spark. And Ilia's divorce gave Paddy the biggest spark of all. Paddy Pimblett didn't just criticize Topuria. He dismantled him. In interviews, clips, and subtle jabs, Paddy accused Ilia of using his divorce as a shield for the same reasons Tyson Fury has been criticized in the past. Stepping back when things get tough, then returning when the landscape is more favorable. But Paddy went a step further. He said Ilia's career was shaped by illusions, carefully controlled narratives, well-timed opportunities, and the UFC's desire to build a marketable European champion. According to him, Ilia's divorce isn't a crisis. It's a storyline. And the accusation cut deep because it played into something fans have quietly whispered. Was Topuria avoiding contenders? Was the UFC protecting him? Was the personal issues announcement just the cleanest way to freeze the division? Paddy's words didn't just question Ilia's choices. They questioned his integrity. He said Ilia made his name off a feud that he exaggerated, replayed, and recycled for years to get his foot in the spotlight door. He said Ilia isn't trustworthy, not because he lies, but because he performs. He plays roles. He crafts an image. And now, to Paddy, the divorced champion in turmoil is just another character. Fighters rarely attack each other's personal life. That's the unwritten rule. But Paddy's claim flipped the script. He didn't attack Ilia's family. He attacked the authenticity of Ilia's pain. And for a champion trying to manage his private collapse, that's the deepest cut possible. Suddenly, the MMA world wasn't just discussing Ilia's divorce. They were discussing whether it was real. And when fans start questioning truth, the line between tragedy and theater becomes razor thin. To understand Paddy's skepticism, you have to understand Paddy's view of the UFC machine. He's seen how narratives are built. He's seen how crises become marketing tools. And he's seen how fighters disappear when the timing is convenient for both sides. So when Ilia's divorce news aligned perfectly with rising contenders, matchmaking pressure, promotional uncertainty, and the demand for a blockbuster unification fight, Paddy didn't call it coincidence. He called it choreography. To him, the timing was suspicious. Too sudden, too clean, too perfectly aligned with the UFC's business calendar. And Paddy voiced the one question everyone was scared to ask. If the divorce is real, why does it look scripted? He pointed out that Ilia released vague statements with no depth, no detail, no timeline, just enough to stall the division without confronting anything publicly. He noted that Ilia vanished immediately after the hardest questions about contenders were being asked. He reminded fans that champions before him have used personal issues to delay fights strategically. Paddy isn't claiming Ilia has no problems. He's claiming Ilia's problems are being used as strategy, that there's a difference between truth and timing, between struggle and storyline. And the most explosive implication, if Ilia's divorce is legitimate, then the UFC is leveraging a man's real suffering for business advantage. If Ilia's divorce is exaggerated, then the champion is manipulating fans. Both outcomes create chaos. Both outcomes fuel drama. Both outcomes revive the feud Paddy has been itching to settle. Because now, this rivalry isn't about who's the better fighter. It's about who's telling the truth. Paddy Pimblett has always been loud, chaotic, unpredictable, but never calculated. At least, that's what people thought. But his attacks on Ilia Topuria during the divorce controversy weren't impulsive. They were precise. His timing wasn't emotional. It was strategic. Paddy saw a moment of vulnerability and pounced like a fighter who finally smelled blood after years of circling. To Paddy, Ilia's disappearance isn't a tragedy. It's an opening. And in combat sports, openings don't last. He's openly questioned why Ilia, a man known for his bravado and icy confidence, suddenly collapsed the moment pressure peaked. He pointed out that Ilia was loud when calling out older fighters, loud when mocking prospects, loud when chasing clout, yet silent when his division demanded answers. Paddy said that a real champion stands up in adversity, not behind cryptic statements and emotional smokescreens. But Paddy didn't stop at criticizing Ilia's timing. He attacked his character. He claimed Ilia built his lion persona on fragile ego and media manipulation, that the champion's entire image is curated, right down to the swagger, the stare-downs, the interviews. And now, when a real crisis hit, Paddy said that Ilia's mask cracked, that the true Ilia surfaced, insecure, confused, scrambling for cover. This wasn't just trash talk anymore. This was psychological warfare. Paddy's resentment has been building since the backstage bottle incident, an event Paddy says Ilia exaggerated to gain notoriety, replaying it endlessly as if it were some legendary beef. Paddy believes Ilia owes half of his early hype to that moment, and he's tired of seeing the storyline recycled. Now, with Ilia's personal life fracturing, Paddy flipped the narrative on its head. He built his name on drama, and now he's hiding behind drama. But here's the twist. By saying this, Paddy positioned himself as the one voice calling out the illusion, painting himself not as a rival, but as the only person willing to see through the fog. The result? Fans are divided. Fighters are whispering. The division suddenly feels more volatile than ever. And Ilia's silence? It's no longer interpreted as privacy. It's interpreted as retreat. Paddy didn't just question Ilia's emotional integrity. He questioned the UFC's entire role in the situation. And that's where the story deepens. Because Paddy sees patterns most fans overlook. The UFC doesn't slow down for emotions. It doesn't pause for heartbreak. It doesn't step aside for private struggles unless that pause benefits them. And in this case, Paddy believes it does. He argued that Ilia's divorce storyline conveniently halts the division at the exact moment when Tsarukyan surged in popularity, when multiple contenders positioned themselves for title shots, and when the UFC calendar needed a major unification fight to anchor future pay-per-views. A champion stepping back provides drama, anticipation, controversy, and, most importantly, time. Time to build challengers. Time to build Ilia's return storyline. Time to build financial momentum. In Paddy's mind, this isn't crisis. It's marketing. He claimed the UFC benefits from Ilia's silence in 3 major ways. 1. The chase narrative. Fans love a missing champion. It creates mystery, hype, suspense. And Paddy insists the UFC knows this perfectly. 2. The contender surge. While Ilia is gone, fighters Fighters like Sarukyan, Gaithya, and even Paddy himself can rack up wins, build fan bases, and intensify the stakes for Ilia's comeback. 3. The Big Return Fight. A champion returning from personal turmoil sells more than any routine defense ever could. And here's where Paddy added the dagger. He said Ilia isn't the victim of UFC manipulation. He's an active participant in it. That Ilia knows exactly how to use vulnerability to garner sympathy, soften criticism, and extend his title reign without fighting. But the accusation that hit hardest? Paddy said, Ilia is the last fighter who deserves sympathy. He played tough guy for years, Paddy said, but when things got real, he hid behind emotional PR. To Paddy, Ilia's hiatus isn't a tragedy. It's a tactic, a calculated move wrapped in a personal crisis. And whether Paddy is right or wrong, his theory injected gasoline into a rivalry that was already burning. And Ilia's silence only made people wonder more. A rivalry becomes legendary not when two fighters hate each other, but when they expose each other. That's what makes Paddy versus Ilia different from simple trash talk. Paddy isn't trying to hurt Ilia's feelings. He's trying to dismantle Ilia's identity. And in combat sports, identity is everything. When Paddy accused Ilia of being a fraud, he didn't mean a bad fighter. He meant a man pretending to have a narrative he doesn't deserve. A man whose reputation was built on a feud he kept dragging into the spotlight. A man who weaponized drama when it benefited him, but hid behind it when it didn't. Now, Paddy is flipping the script. He's taking Ilia's divorce, something deeply personal, and turning it into a weapon aimed straight at Ilia's credibility. Not mocking the pain, not attacking the family, but attacking the story around the pain. And in doing so, Paddy reignited a rivalry that had cooled, sharpened it, and injected it with something much more potent than trash talk. Ideology. This isn't about skill, it's about authenticity, about who is real and who isn't. To Paddy, Ilia's entire brand is collapsing under the weight of his own contradictions, and Paddy is standing above the rubble, pointing at the cracks no one dared to acknowledge. He made his name off a feud he milked for years. He acts like a monster until real life hits him. He's hiding behind a narrative someone else wrote for him. He's not hurt? He's stalling? These aren't insults. They're accusations designed to stick. And now, fans want answers. Contenders want clarity. The UFC wants momentum. And Ilia, trapped in silence, is watching the loudest voice in the division reshape the entire perception of who he is. This rivalry has evolved into something far bigger than a backstage brawl. It's a war over narrative, a war over truth, a war over identity. And Paddy just forced Ilia into a corner he can't fight his way out of with punches. For years, Ilia Topuria's aura was bulletproof, undefeated, sharp-tongued, cold-faced. A man who walked into arenas with the swagger of someone certain he could beat everyone in the room. But when a fighter disappears during their prime, when a champion vanishes with no timeline, no statement, no clarity, that aura begins to crack. And fighters like Paddy Pimblett know exactly how to slip through those cracks. Paddy's attacks didn't just insult Ilia, they reframed him. Before the divorce chaos, Ilia's identity was simple: the quiet killer, the unstoppable force, the next era-defining champion. But Paddy has replaced that identity with something far more damaging. A man hiding behind excuses. A champion protected by narrative. A fighter too fragile to face pressure. That shift may be subtle to casual fans, but in combat sports, it's catastrophic. Aura is currency. Confidence is armor. Belief is a weapon. When fans believe a champion is unshakable, opponents hesitate. But when fans start to believe the champion is vulnerable, opponents start to believe it too. And belief is the most dangerous force in fighting. Paddy's accusations go beyond trash talk. They target Ilia's psychology. He's not trying to beat Topuria in the cage. He's trying to hollow him out before he even returns. Paddy is planting seeds of doubt, not just in Ilia's mind, but in the minds of every lightweight watching. He's saying, "Your champion isn't a lion, he's a soap opera." He didn't disappear because he's hurting. He disappeared because he's scared. He's not a king taking care of his kingdom. He's a fraud hiding behind curtains. It's psychological warfare at its highest level. And the worst part? Ilia can't respond. He can't come out and rebut every claim. He can't prove Paddy wrong without stepping back into the cage. He can't defend himself without exposing the exact emotional rawness Paddy claims he's hiding. This puts Topuria in the most dangerous position a champion can be in. Silent, while his rival defines him. Tyson once experienced this same collapse. During his divorces, his aura of invincibility melted. Opponents stopped fearing him. Critics stopped praising him. And soon enough, that psychological collapse became physical collapse inside the ring. Paddy sees that happening to Ilia in real time. And instead of offering sympathy, he's kicking down the throne door and telling the world the king was made of cardboard the whole time. One of the most telling details in this entire saga is something fans often overlook. The UFC hasn't stepped in. No clarifying statement, no reassurance, no timeline update, no "leave Ilia alone" message. Nothing. That silence isn't accidental, it's strategic. Because Paddy Pimblett is doing something the UFC loves, creating chaos that sells. Ilia Topuria's personal crisis may be tragic, but in business terms, it's the perfect heat source for future matchups. And Paddy is pouring gasoline on it. From the UFC's perspective, this is ideal. Their champion is technically still champion. Their rising star is generating waves. Their division is more talked about than ever. And all of it is happening without them needing to intervene. They learned a long time ago that silence is powerful. When a promotion chooses silence, it's because attention is already doing the work. Paddy's attacks stirred fans more than any UFC promo could. His accusations brought eyes back to a division that was starting to drift, and his refusal to treat Ilia's divorce as legitimate has created a new layer of intrigue. Is it real? Is it staged? Is Ilia avoiding fights? Is the UFC protecting him? None of these questions have answers, but all of them have value. And here's where Paddy's role becomes even more interesting. He is saying everything the UFC cannot. The UFC cannot publicly call a champion out for hiding. They cannot accuse a fighter of faking personal issues. They cannot imply their champion is protected. But Paddy can, and Paddy is. And whether he knows it or not, the UFC is benefiting from every word. But the business calculation has a darker side. If Ilia is genuinely suffering, the UFC will still let the chaos grow, because chaos builds opportunities. Chaos builds anticipation. Chaos builds pay-per-view numbers. Just like Tyson's personal collapse fueled some of the most dramatic moments of his career, moments the boxing world profited from, Ilia's disappearance is now becoming the emotional engine of the lightweight division. And Paddy? He's become the unofficial narrator of Ilia's downfall. The loud voice defining who the champion really is. The rival shaping Ilia's identity during his weakest moment. Whether he's right or wrong doesn't matter. In the court of public opinion, the loudest voice wins. And right now, Paddy is the loudest man in the room. Rivalries in MMA come and go, but once in a generation, a feud becomes bigger than rankings, bigger than belts, bigger than the sport itself. A rivalry that reflects something deeper: identity, authenticity, pride, culture, ego, narrative. Paddy versus Ilia has now crossed into that territory. This isn't about fighting styles. It's about who these men are when the lights turn off. Paddy sees Ilia as a manufactured champion, skilled but shallow, tough but fragile, built on borrowed hype and opportunistic storytelling. And Ilia, though silent now, his past words show he sees Paddy as a clown, a fraud with a big mouth and small accomplishments. But now, the power dynamic has flipped. Paddy holds the microphone, Ilia holds the silence. And silence, in this moment, is costing Ilia more than any injury ever could. Paddy's accusations have reframed Ilia's divorce not as tragedy, but as tactic. Not as breakdown, but as business. Not as pain, but as protection. And the MMA world is starting to believe him. This leaves Ilia with only two paths forward. Path 1. Return and destroy Paddy, physically and narratively. If Ilia comes back, crushes his next opponent, and calls out Paddy directly, the entire dynamic shifts. The champion regains control. The narrative resets. The aura rebuilds. The feud becomes the biggest fight of the year. Path 2. Stay silent and let Paddy rewrite history forever. If Ilia delays too long, this story becomes the truth. Fans will assume he's hiding. Contenders will assume he's weak. The UFC will pivot to new stars. And Paddy will become the man who exposed a champion's identity crisis. In this scenario, Ilia won't just lose momentum, he'll lose myth. This is how Tyson lost control of his legacy in real time. His personal life became the narrative. His rivals became the storytellers. His silence became the stage. And by the time he tried to regain control, the world had already decided who he was. Ilia is at that same critical moment. A moment where he can either reclaim his throne or watch his rival sit on it. A moment where he can either reveal truth or let Paddy's accusations become truth. A moment where he can either fight again or fade behind a story he never meant to star in. Because Paddy isn't just reviving an old feud, he is shaping the future of the division. He is shaping Ilia's public identity. He is shaping the fight that could define an entire era of lightweight MMA. And when Ilia finally returns, the world won't care about rankings or records. They'll care about one thing. Is Paddy right?